guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking about my 2022 reading stats as well as a comparison to 2021. So if you're new here, hello, welcome. My name is Sam. I started my YouTube channel 2 years ago in 2021, which is so crazy. It feels like much longer already. But in that time, I basically started BookTube. I picked up reading as like a serious hobby again, which I hadn't done since I was younger. And I fell back in love, but like harder than before. Now I've got an obsession, if you will. It's like a special interest almost, but not quite that fixated, obsessive. But either way, I love reading, and that's been a big thing. And I started tracking my reading since starting BookTube, since reading like hardcore and seriously. And so now we get to like compare how my reading has changed, how I've gotten better, how I've evolved. It's very exciting. So let's just jump in. I don't want to make this too long or too stat heavy and it be boring. So in 2022, we started off my reading year, as I'm sure many people would have. So in January, I read 7 books, February 6, March 11, April 14, May 16, June 16, July 15, August 5, September 15, October 26, November 8, December 6. Wild. October was my best reading month ever in the history of reading. In 2021, the most books that I had read in a month was 14. So I've improved quite well. My average is between 14 to 16, really. I read a higher amount of books because I read a lot of audiobooks. I love to like do personal 24-hour readathons where I just binge read a bunch of stuff. So I'm not surprised. I also read way more books than I thought. I had set my goal for this year to 100, which became 102, because I read some silly books that I counted on Goodreads but weren't really books to count, so went up to 102. I read in total this year 145 books. Last year, 2021, which is now 2 years ago, this is getting complicated, I read 75 exact books. So that was my goal for 2021 based off like, it started at I think like 25 and then it went to 50 and then it went to 75 because I just realized that I was able to read more than I thought. And so that's why that happened. This year I was like 100's like a good place. And I well surpassed that to my surprise. And so now it's continued to go up. I don't think I'll ever be one of those like cool girlies that reads like 200 plus books a month, or not a month, oh my god, a year. I wish that could be me. I don't see that being me, because like hyperfixations take you completely different places, and so definitely not always reading. But I am still very proud of this. I'm like a badass reader, who knows. Anyway, as for pages read, my pages had significantly increased from the previous reading year. My most read was September with 3,456 pages, compared to my best read page count in 2021 being 1,839. And my lowest in 2021 was 0. My lowest in 2022 was 66 in February. I'm pretty proud of that. Like the fact that I'm, especially towards June, like the second half of the year, above 2,000 most months, that's fantastic. That's like so crazy bonkers to me because I am a slow reader and I'm very aware of like my dyslexia. Being slow is partly because of that, partly because I did not have the confidence to read as a kid. I was very insecure about it, and so I never like put in practice. I would read what I had to, bare minimum stuff most of the time, but it was always something I enjoyed. I just felt like I was bad at it, so I couldn't do it, which is so silly. So it's really crazy that this year I've probably read more physical books than I ever have, but also that I've like read so many pages with or without the help of audiobooks. It doesn't matter. Like my eyeballs still looked at these words, and that's so crazy. And like I'm so proud of that because that's not something I thought I could do. I've seen a lot of people obviously do it on BookTube, but I was like, that couldn't be me. I can't read 2,000 pages in a month. I can't be one of those crazy people that read like 15,000 or whatever, but like I'm so proud of myself. As for hours listened to audiobooks, that's what I do. My highest listened month was October because I was doing Booktober, which I was posting videos almost every day, at least to my best attempt, and I also was listening to a lot of books because I was attempting to read a book every day of the month. That was so silly. That's a lot to handle in 1 month. One or the other, Sam. But I feel like my audiobook listening was, like, as you can see in the graph, so sporadic. It was so all over the place. In 2021, like, it was pretty gradual for the most part, minus 3 months at the end. But the most that I listened to in 2021 was December, which was 71 hours and 15 minutes because I was trying to, like, cram in the end of year reading. But, like, on average, I was around, like, the 30s, 40s, whereas this year I'm, like, 50s to 70s, like, much higher, which I'm so proud of. But it's also fun to compare, like, July, for example, I listened to 15 hours and 15 minutes of audiobooks, but I read 2,440 pages. Like, bonkers. Who knew I could just do such things like that? So in total, I read 19,173 pages, and I listened to 671 hours and like 30 minutes, give or take, which that's so many pages. I'm so proud of myself. Compared to 2021, I read 7,000 pages in total, and I listened to about 437 hours total. So that's an improvement, obviously, because I had read more just in general. Like, I read more books. Obviously, the stat's going to go up, but it's good to feel like my reading has improved. I feel like the more practice makes perfect, besties. The more I read, the better I get. So if I'm reading physical books with an audiobook narrating, I feel like I start to read faster because my brain can just read rather than get distracted, forget what's going on, reread sentence over and over again, stutter on pages because I don't know how to pronounce words or can't read them or have to look definitions up. Like, audiobooks just make it quicker. And so it's good to see that there is an improvement in my reading. As for my methods, 58 were audiobooks, 41 were ebooks, which bonkers. 24 were physical and 22 were mixed media, which means that 22 were audiobooks and physical together, which means that would be math, would be 46 physical and 80 audiobooks. She's a math girl. So in total, like 40% audiobook, 15% mixed media, 16% physical, 28% ebook. 2021 was 64% audiobook, 20% physical, 7% mixed media, and 9% ebooks. So that's a definite change. I really did think that my physical was going to be higher. I won't lie. I didn't know I read that many ebooks. Yes, some of those ebooks were graphic novels, but I'm still shocked by that because 41 compared to the previous year of 7, like, that's a big difference. So that's very interesting. As for genres, I read across 16 genres this year. The only new genre in comparison to 2021 was crime. I read one of those. Crazy. My most read, fantasy, with exact 50, and followed behind horror at 29. That's just like, that's what I love. I love horror. I love fantasy. Those are my two top favorite genres ever. You mash them together, that's my favorite perfect genre. And then followed shortly behind was romance at 20, which is so funny because most of my romance, Heartstopper. I reread Heartstopper, so that's already 8. Plus the yearbook, which was 9 because I didn't know how to classify it. Yes. The most interesting would be the nonfiction and the magical realism, because I don't love magical realism, but I still read 6, 3 of them being Before You Get Cold series by Toshi Kazukawaguchi. But that's still like weirdly high for a girl that says she does not like that genre. And then nonfiction, I read 8. And I could tell you 2. I could tell you 2, maybe 3 of them. So I don't know how I did that. I'm not someone who prioritizes nonfiction. It just doesn't bring me as much happiness. I just don't care as much unless I'm like fixated and obsessed with a topic. Like, I don't want to read about that kind of stuff. I'm so sorry. I know that's like not fun, but I'm not a big nonfiction girly. I'm planning to read 2 for sure this year, which are currently sitting on my shelf. Besides those 2, if I read it, I read it. If people are like, this is so good, Sam, read it, I'll be like, okay. But that's it. One of my favorite new stats, that's not new, but like my favorite like increased stat, hands down, I read 15 translated books, which out of 145, 6, whatever I said, not great, but out of, like, compared to last year, where I read 2, it's so good. I'm so proud. I really enjoyed translated fiction. Like, in general, especially Japanese fiction, I've been having a really fun time picking them up. Currently, I'm getting through the Fruits Basket manga, which is technically translated from Japanese. So that will impact my stats for 2023 a lot. But I really enjoy them. I've been having a lot of fun with them. So I'm excited to continue with that. There are a few authors that I'm incredibly interested in picking up more from. Some authors that I'm like Samantha Schweblin. I would love to try out some of her works, especially Fever Dream. So there's a lot of authors I'm excited to touch this year. Not touch, that sounds wrong. Excited to read this year. Pick up. Anyway. Looking at book format, I read 66 novels and 33 novellas, 9 short story collections, or short stories in general. I read, what is that number? 32 graphic novels, 2 comics, and 1 manga. So that's 45% of the books that I've read being novels. So great. 23% like novellas, which I love novellas personally. I think they're so fun. I love short fiction. And then 22% being graphic novels, basically tied with novellas. I love that for me. I love this like graphic novel era that I had. I'm hoping to continue that. I think it's going to play a big role in reading more because I just love them so much. They make me so happy. Like, they just like make my heart whole. Compared to 2021, I read 69% novels, 17% novellas, and 5% graphic novels. So like overall, it increased like significantly. Like, I was reading more shorter works than novels, which I'm okay with, but like at the same time it's a very weird place to be in, because I'm like, I read so much, but then if I look at it and it's like, yeah, well, 45% of your reading is graphic novels or short novels, and it's like, yeah, that's true. That's like less reading, but it's not, it doesn't matter. And like, I just need to program my brain to think differently. Like, reading is reading. I shouldn't care what kind of reading it is, you know? I'm gonna save star ratings for last because that's exciting. All right, age category, 50% adult, 46% young adult, 1% middle grade, 1% like less than 1% children. I definitely have read more adult this year. I think just because I was picking up more new releases that just turned out to be adult, but also like reading more backlist stuff like The Night Circus, which is adult. So it definitely increased. I'm still very happy with my like almost half and half ratio of adult and young adult. Like, that just really works for me. I love them both for different reasons. I do find that I have a higher success rate with young adult, but I enjoy like adult more, if that makes sense. Like, when I find an adult book that I love, like, I love it, but I find more like 4 and 5 stars in young adult just because I like the whimsical fun of it, which I don't find as often. Not that I don't find it, but just not as often in adult. As for representation for LGBTQ, 68% of my reading had none at all, which is so sad. 25% the main character was part of the LGBTQIA plus community, and in 7% it was present in the book. Well, I did read more books technically that had LGBTQ rep, but I definitely want to increase that. I want to find more things that include it that I'm going to enjoy. I don't want to pick up contemporary just because there's LGBTQ in it, because I know I'm not going to get as much joy out of it. As for disability, 88% absent. Not great. Most of the disability books that I do read are like mental health disability kind of representation. So that's something I do want to work on in the coming year, is just getting better at reading books that are more diverse in disability. I'm really excited to read Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin, I think. It's definitely one of those books that like I'm excited to see, because it's not like chronic illness especially is a book I would like to just like, not a book, is a topic, a theme that I would like to see more in books. I really enjoyed the second time around Mona Awad's All's Well, which is like a satirical piece on chronic pain and illness. Recommend. It's difficult to get through, but it is good. So I'm looking for more things kind of like that are going to talk about it, and I, as someone who does not experience it, would like to hear it firsthand from people who have experienced it and like be more educated on the topic through books. Maybe I'll pick up some nonfictions about that, who knows, but I do want to read more diversely overall. As for my authors, 71% were not POC authors, and 26% were 2%, I don't know. My research goes as far as Goodreads, a Google search, Instagram. Beyond that, I don't know. If it's hard to find information on an author, like, I'm not gonna pry. So I definitely need to get better at reading POC authors. I read almost 60% women authors, which I love. I read 7% non-binary. 8% of the books that I read were multiple authors, which means there's multiple identities. And then 25% exactly of men, which I like reading men, but not as often. As a woman, I'm going to lean more towards women's writing, especially women writing women. I don't like men writing women. It makes me so uncomfortable. So I'm cool with that, just skyrocketing up, more non-binary, more trans, more women in my authors. But I definitely need to get better about my POC authors. My favorite way of tracking like authors is based off their nationality. I love knowing where I'm reading from. I'm sort of participating in the like Read Around the World challenge, where you read a book from every country. I was not tracking it most of the year because I just could not be bothered, but I do still have a lot of fun looking at that stat. So 47% American, of course. My next highest stat was British at 11, and then Japanese and Irish are tied at 5%, and multiple authors are also tied at 5%. But I just love reading around. So 4 Indigenous authors, 2 French authors, a bunch of unknowns, some Russian, some Argentina, Canadian, Japanese, Swedish, Italian, German, Vietnamese American, Korean American. I've got 5 authors in Korean American. Chinese American, an Australian, or New Zealand. I wrote Kiwi, which I think is just so funny. Singaporean, 1 everywhere. I have no clue what that means. I don't know. Colombian American, Norwegian, Ecuadorian American, Filipino American, Chinese American, Brazilian. I just think it's so fun, like, reading of a bunch of different backgrounds. Even though a lot of my authors are very like US centric, I do need to work on that, but I just like reading different perspectives, different walks of life. I definitely read a lot of books in 2021 by authors I enjoyed that were POC, that I was like, I'll read their other book in 2022, and then just like didn't. So I must correct that in many ways as well. As for how I got books, most of them, 65.5% of them, were from Scribd. One book was online. 31% I owned. 1.4% were ARCs, which is so fun. I'm an ARC reader now. Anyone can be with NetGalley. I do enjoy it. I have not requested a NetGalley book for quite some time because I haven't been reading the ones that I got, and so I just stopped until I'm better about that. I read some webtoons, and I got one from the library, whereas last year it was all Scribd except for the few that I owned. So I would say I'm doing significantly better now that I have my library card and I'm getting audiobooks through Libby and Hoopla. Game changer. It's such a game changer because I can just use my library more than Scribd. I haven't touched Scribd truly in so long. It's been months since I've been reading from Scribd, so that's great. Rereads, 96.6 of my books were first-time reads. I reread 5 books. I'm not a big rereader. There are a few books that I read this year that I'm like, hell yeah, I'm rereading that soon. So that's exciting. I do enjoy rereads. Most of them were Heartstoppers, so I foresee that continuing to happen a lot. I won't lie. But there were a few fantasy books that I was like, yeah, I'd read this again. Fable, I would totally read that again. I'm down to be a rereader. This one hurts. Standalones versus series. So I did maintain my more standalones than series reputation. Wow, words. At 60% I standalones. So I read 68 standalone books. Love that for me, especially because I read a lot of horror and thriller and a few romances, graphic novels usually. It makes sense that I'm reading more standalones, but I did start 31 series this year. I doubled the series started this year than the previous year. I finished 5 of them. That's so bad. I finished 5 series. Oh no, that pains me. I read 22 sequels though. So she's making moves. I'm so upset that I'm gonna have to talk about all of that here soon, but yeah, so many series. I don't know how. I know how I did it. I read things. I did not track many stats this year, throughout the year. I would go and be like, quarter update, I'll throw in all my knowledge. So yeah, I started a lot of series, and I did not pay attention to the series I was starting. It just sort of happened. It happens sometimes. I don't know. Maybe this year we'll get better about that. Because I'm not gonna lie, starting that many series, I have a good memory. I don't know if I remember every first book in a series that I read this year. So that'll be really fun to analyze later. As for new authors versus returning, this one, so interesting. So 38.2% of the out of the authors I read were familiar to me, authors I read from before, and 61% were new authors. Last year, I read 85% new authors and 14.7% were authors I was familiar with, which means I read that author and then read another book from them. So it's really fun, knowing now that the authors that I've read from before were because I either read them the previous year or because I was binging, their series or whatever, or I really like their work. Stephen Graham Jones, we'll get to this, is a repeating author. I've read 3 in 2021 and 2 in 2022, which it's so fun seeing authors continuing on. Peter Swanson, loved him in 2021, hated him in 2022. Riley Sager, hated him in 2021, liked him in 2022. We're still on the fence about Riley Sager, but I really like seeing my author's progression. The most read author of this year was Alice Oseman at 10 because of rereads. The next one was Joe Hill and Gabriel Rodriguez, I believe, who wrote Lock and Key. It's a graphic novel, 6-book series, so I read all of those. Followed by my love, Keelan Patrick Burke, my favorite horror writer. I'm so excited to continue reading his list in 2023. I'm collecting him like Pokemons. I found most of his works in paperback on Amazon. I'm so excited. He's mostly self-published, so They're like kind of inexpensive. I'm so excited. I'm about to buy them all. And also Adrienne Young, because I binged all of her books before buying Saint, except for Spells Trouble and Saint. Those are only two I've not read by Adrienne Young yet, and I'm okay with that because that means I can this year. Following up with that were Jennifer L. Armentrout, because I'm working my way through the Lux series, Renee Audier, because I read some like 0.5, 1.5 kind of books, and I read 3 books from Niveau, who I am enjoying. I still need to read the 3rd book in the something about the Riverlands. There's like a pig on the cover. That series that is ongoing, following Chi. I don't know what it's called. The first book is The Empress of Salt and Fortune. I'm really excited to be continuing in that because the 3rd book just came out. But I also read Siren Queen, which was also very good. So I'm so happy with the authors that I'm reading. I remember them. They're like important in my reading history, which is so cool. I read 102 different authors this year, which is so fun. I've also noticed, I'm not going to go into publishing because like so many publishers. There's so many publishers, and I do track it, but like, so many. The only thing I will note is that compared to 2021, I read far more self-published books in 2022. I don't necessarily track what publishers are indie or not, so I can't give you that stat, but I did read 7 self-published books, which I think is quite nice. I read 1 in 2021, which is not so nice. So I'm proud that I'm getting better about that. I want to continue getting better about that. I don't have Kindle Unlimited, so like finding self-published authors is a bit harder. So maybe that'll be a goal. Who knows? Now let's get into my star ratings, shall we? I had such a successful reading year, I'm not even gonna lie. I gave out 1 singular, 1 star, which was a DNF. So I didn't even really rate it. I didn't count my DNF on Goodreads or anything. I DNF'd A Calendar of Wisdom by Tolstoy, I believe. It's not bad. I just could not commit to reading from him every day of the year. I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. I made it until February, and then I was like, no, I can't. So that's the only book that I truly DNF'd this year. I have no plans of picking that one back up. So that's the only bad rating I really gave. So let's go through this. I gave 3 books 2 stars, 3 books 2.5 stars. I did not rate 5 books. I gave 1.5, which was the Tolstoy. I gave 16 books 3 stars. I gave 28 books 3.5 stars. I gave 44 books 4 stars. That's so cool. And then I gave 17 books 4.5 stars. And then I gave 28 books 5 stars. 28 books got 5 stars for me this year. That's so good. Counting the 28, the 17, and the 44, I will not be doing that math. I'm so sorry. That's really high ratings. That's so good. I don't know if it's because I've found the books that I like more, or if it's because I'm finding authors that I like more. I'm not sure what it is. I feel it's a mix of everything. I'm just finding books that are more my style and picking up things that I know I'll be interested in. I'm reading more for myself than I am for BookTube, and I'm aligning my reading with things I'll enjoy. I think it all plays a role. I'm also reading more authors that I love, Keelan Patrick Burke. I've not rated any of his books below a 3. I just really enjoy his stories, and so it's one of those things that I'm picking up people I know will get higher ratings, so it's skewing it in a good way. So those are all of the stats. It's a lot. I hope you were able to follow along. I hope this was slightly interesting. I'm just proud of myself for reading, and I'm proud of you for reading too if you read anything at all this year, or I guess last year. So yeah, that's it. I'm increasing and getting better as a reader. My goal for this year is 150 books, which is so insane. I might in my goals video break down what I'm aiming for percentage-wise between like graphic novels, so on and so forth. But for right now, 150 books is the goal. I'm incredibly excited. I'm a little bit nervous. It's like we're in January now and I have barely read anything. So we're starting the year off so great. But hopefully by the time this goes up, I will have read like 10 more things. Who knows? But that's going to be it for me today. I hope you enjoyed this very rambly numbers game video. I hope that you maybe gained something. Maybe you learned something about me. I don't know. I don't know what stats videos do for anybody but myself, so thanks for watching. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want to see more from me. I post a lot. Yeah, that's gonna be it. I will see you guys soon in my next video, which will be tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow. Oh yeah, stick around for tomorrow's video. It's gonna be super fun. We're gonna talk about new releases for 2023 that I'm excited for. So, bye!